Bless you. Yeah. Oh, someone put the bed here already.
That's all right.
That's right, you make
No,
sense.
no, 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 you stay there. There's a couple of seats there. The doctor bags.
Hi-yo.
Would you do? I'll do more.
We had the account service yesterday.
Sorry, I'm just counting
I'll come to the
seats.
numbers.
Are you sitting in front, Richard?
Well, it's fine. I can navigate round.
Yeah.
I'll go to the front.
Sorry.
Everyone's
You can't run away from me.
I'm delighted to have you as company.
So just saying for that area that post office, you know, in St George's?
Oh yeah, on the 8th.
Yeah, just done it now.
I've just done it. I've been there.
As I've been there, I went to Red School this morning.
Yeah.
And then up at the post office. And Mary is up here talking today. Anyone done anything yet?
No, we're just starting, so we're all right.
Oh, they went for lunch. Missed that bit, didn't they? They were all right.
Not so many didn't have
What we playing on today?
Just very briefly, I'm the CEO.
So I run those gardens. I'm not talking George's. I've just come back from opening I've been to school this morning and then we just opened the post office in St George's and I said, no, try and get down to school. So she'll probably go, oh, you could do the talking. I mean, it's a heck of a...
So she's
Yeah, so obviously it's a good us. So
from each other.
Have you all enjoyed the talk? Have you been here before? So we'll join with India and just jigsaw puzzle.
How are you know?
I've been a few times now. I've had a few tours now. You imagine getting hungry and one of the bits missing there. A whole lot of someone's been in India making this. Building over there. I think they've been out on strike, the actual posts, haven't they? I assume they've got a start. So, he's actually got work on the post in England. He's got the girls from WXB. Quite the same people. Yeah. All the same ladies. Apparently, it was 3 weeks ago, she's quick ones. They put it in turn around in 3 weeks. Yeah. Half the stuff doesn't go in there, like today when we're starting. Sue's still there. It's nice to meet you.
How are we doing, Chris?
Yeah, we're almost there. We're just doing final turn on
Brilliant.
the cameras. Have you got it come through now? So that's on. That's on. So the splitter. Coming from the splitter. We've got three lights on the splitter. So it's this cable here. Well, it's definitely coming through the splitter, okay? But what we do is the last thing, because the splitter's working, because it's coming up from there. Yeah, yeah. Right, I'm just going to show you mine in a minute. The stream is running. It's just a quiet for the whole site. Yeah, so HDMI in. What I'm saying, so you have it until. Are we ready? Seconds, I'll give you another one again. Let's go live.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's fine. We'll just do it and then we'll do it. Okay, cool. Right, let me just start the camera recording and we're good. Okay, I'll give you the thumbs up, Charlotte.
Okay. Hello and welcome everybody. Really delighted to welcome you all to Involve Kent's annual general meeting, together working in partnership for healthy, connected people and communities. I'm Charlotte Osborne-Ford, I'm the CEO of Involve Kent, and I'm really delighted to be presenting to you today from the Gurdwara. We're really honoured to have been welcomed by the Sikh community today, and as ever, ambitiously, we've got a live audience here at the Gurdwara, but we're also broadcasting through some very clever technology through YouTube, and we also have a Teams call live with our trustees so they can interact with the meeting and vote and approve the formal business of the event, which is happening a bit later. So we've got a really packed agenda today, and we're going to start with an overview of our work at Involve Kent, which I've framed as innovative solutions to improve health, because that's often what we're described as doing at Involve, having innovative solutions to improve people's health. And I'm going to start with a really quick overview of Involve's work, and particularly over the last year. So hopefully you all know what we do, but to summarise, it is promoting choice, connecting people and challenging inequalities. That's the purpose of Involve Kent, that's why we're here. And this year, hopefully you've all had a chance to review our annual report. We supported over 30,000 people of all ages across Kent and Medway. That's far more than we've ever supported before. So we're growing rapidly. And we need to grow rapidly because of the amount of need and issues in the community. We really have three main types of services. And the first is often described as social prescribing or navigation. This is working closely with partners, with GPs, with health professionals, with social care, with housing, to support people who are experiencing issues which are impacting on their health. So that might be housing, debt, poverty, might be loneliness, isolation, relationship issues. And social prescribing and navigation services will work with somebody for a relatively short term to build their confidence, their skills, and help them really feel better and more connected. The next area of our work is community wellbeing. And this is about building really strong, resilient communities, working with partners, working with the community and faith groups, and making sure that there's a really diverse and rich range of activities for people, which are as inclusive as possible, particularly for people with complex needs, such as frailty and severe mental ill health. And our last area of work is practical support. So we don't just do signposting and linking, we do actually provide practical support for people in need. One of the services which we've run for over 40 years, which is really critical to our work, is our volunteer transport service, where volunteers use their own cars to collect people and take them to trips, activities, GP appointments, etc. But increasingly, we're doing something described as brokerage or personal healthcare budgets, and this is about acting as a broker on behalf of the NHS to make sure that people in the community with health needs can choose what they want to, the support they want to improve their health. And we'll cover a bit more of that later. So I could talk to you in detail about all of these different services because we have a wide and diverse range of different services. But you've got your annual report and I really hope you will read it and take a look at it. And of course it's all on our website. What I wanted to do instead is really talk about personal experiences of the people that we've worked with over the last year and share their stories so that you can hear in their own words the journey that they've taken with Involve and why our services are important and why they make a difference. So the first story is Chris, and it's important to say everybody that I'm talking about today has given their consent for their story to be shared. In fact, some people are really passionate about sharing their story because they want other people to go through, not to go through the things that they have, and to be able to access our services quicker and to access social prescribing quicker. So they're very keen for their stories to be shared. So Chris's story begins with a referral from a clinician called Ethel. Ethel works in the NHS Integrated Pain Management Service. The Integrated Pain Management Service, it's an NHS clinical service. It's led by pharmacists and physiotherapists. And the purpose of this service is for people who've got really chronic, serious pain conditions where other parts of the NHS haven't been able to help them. And we have a new innovation working with chronic pain services to offer social prescribing alongside medical prescribing for those patients. And Chris is one of those referrals. So Chris is referred by Ethel. And in the referral, Ethel gives very detailed referrals so that we can understand the patient. She describes Chris, and Chris is 52. He has multiple health issues, including neuropathy, chronic spinal pain, diabetes, and a vacuum pump fitted to his leg to drain infection. He's a wheelchair user. He's had a relationship breakdown. Chris is housebound. He's not left his home for the last 2 years. He spends his time in a hospital bed downstairs. He doesn't work and he relies on benefits. Ethel's referral is very detailed, and actually Chris isn't just housebound. Chris is really bedbound, so he uses his wheelchair a couple of times a day to mobilise, to go into his wet room, bathroom, to wash, to use the bathroom, and that's the extent of his movement. Because of his leg ulcers, because of his diabetes, he's frightened to stand up because they may deteriorate. Chris says, my life is overwhelming right now. I can't see which way is up. My mum's gone into a care home who was caring for her, leaving a lot of debt, and I can't get through the paperwork. I need to sort my own benefits out, but I can't face the forms. I was in the military and I miss the camaraderie of other men. So Chris has had a busy and important job in the past, and now at 52, he hasn't left the house in 2 years. And this sounds like an extreme referral, but actually all of the referrals Ethel has sent us are very, very similar to this. People in really difficult physical, mental and social situations. And some organisations might think, what can we do for Chris? Chris is bedbound, he's in a difficult way. To the system, to the state, Chris is a big problem because he's expensive. So diabetes costs 10% of the NHS health budget. It's an expensive condition. And that's because diabetic or district nurses need to visit Chris at home twice a week to dress his wounds. He's at high risk of an unplanned admission to hospital because of his diabetes and his, how well controlled that is. Obviously, if he needs to see a GP, that has to be a home visit, and he's not working. So how do we help Chris? So the first and most important thing we do is we visit Chris at home. So ever since the pandemic, a lot of services say, oh, we've gone digital, or we'll do a telephone call or a video call. For someone like Chris, that's not going to work. And lots of people like Chris are falling through the net where services will not go and visit them at home. So that's vitally important. We visit Chris at home. And, as I mentioned earlier, social prescribing is about working with somebody in a positive way. We come up with an action plan. And these are the things that are on Chris's action plan. And this takes some time. It's not done in the first home visit. This is done over a period of time. So the first job is to help Chris with his paperwork. So if somebody has a real issue around their finances, not only is that causing them stress, that is likely to be then impacting on their housing, on debt and on other issues. So the link worker sits down with Chris and does two things. One, goes through all his mum's paperwork. She is in a lot of debt, and gets it into a situation where it can then be passed over to the Citizens Advice Bureau. So this isn't about us doing everything for Chris, it's about making use of the services that are out there. So Chris's mum's debt is organised, and he's supported to engage with them over the phone. The other thing that we do is sort out Chris's personal independence payment review. So he needs a review. He's entitled to more money because of the level of his disability. So his paperwork and finances are sorted out. Next step, Chris is still at home, but he is starting to think about how he can start to meet other people and start to regain some social confidence. He joins our specialist chronic pain peer support group. It's an online group. It's facilitated by our trained link workers. And what they do in this group is they go through 10 steps to help people to manage chronic pain. So looking at techniques like mindfulness, thinking about pacing, but most importantly, meeting other people with chronic pain and realising that you're not alone, and there are others who have similar experiences, who may have similar techniques and ideas about how they can feel better. And that really makes a big difference to Chris. He's still in touch with the people he met on that group. Next step, leaving the house. So I mentioned our volunteer driving service. This is why it's so critically important. Some of our volunteers have wheelchair accessible vehicles. They are all extremely friendly, supportive and patient people. A volunteer driver goes to his home, helps him mobilise into the wheelchair, into the vehicle, and takes him to the care home so he can see his mum at last. And this first step is the first time he's left his house. Next, Chris is saying, OK, I can do this. I want to do other things. Chris joins our programme Grow Well, funded by Kent County Council. This is a 12-week programme for people to get involved in allotments and gardening and making food and planting seeds. And Chris thrives in this. He really enjoys meeting other people, particularly other people who've been through similar health problems. And he also joins Actively Involved, which you'll hear a lot about later, and he is able to go on our wheelchair-accessible minibus to museum and to the seaside, and again, meeting people, making friends. Chris decides he wants to volunteer, actually, so he becomes the lead volunteer for our Kent Sheds programme, which is a programme to, again, mostly men, but it's open to all, to come together and do woodwork and repair tools. And Chris is actually, again, enjoying the camaraderie of being with other men. He also faces up to his health conditions, so he has a diabetic review and he engages with his GP and with the hospital. And actually, the clinicians advise that the best option for Chris is actually to have his foot amputated. So that is obviously a frightening and horrible thing to face up to, but he does face up to it. So Chris has been in hospital, and while he's in hospital, not only is he texting his friends from his mobile phone, but our hospital link worker visits him in hospital and works with the social services and with the medical team to plan his discharge and make sure that when he gets home, he's got the support that he needs. Chris now feels ready to find employment. He feels that actually he's able to get out and about, he's built up his strength, his confidence, he's ready for that step. Here's Chris Look at that wonderful smile, out with the rest of our volunteers. And this is what Chris says: I now feel valued, I have friends, and I have a community where I belong. I have a purpose and can contribute to the world again, not ruminate on my problems. It's helped change my whole perspective on life and attack my disability and adversities with a positive outlook on life and journey through both good and bad times. So Chris isn't a problem. Chris is an inspiration and an inspiration to others. But Chris's journey with Involve isn't at an end. It's actually just at the beginning, because Chris has accepted a job with Involve, and after Christmas he will be our new wellbeing worker on a new project with Maidstone Borough Council, which is a horticultural volunteering project, and he will be using all of his wisdom, his personal experience, his insight to work with other people with mental health problems and physical disabilities and get them out in the community gardening. So hopefully next year he'll be here and you'll meet him in person. So that's Chris's story. And as I say, not an unusual story for us. We work with lots of people like Chris. They don't all have a success story of returning to work, but many of them do achieve the goals that they want to achieve. This time last year, and it was exactly this time last year, we held our AGM, and the high point for me was announcing a new service that we had designed with the NHS in Kent and Medway called Moving Forwards. And Moving Forwards is a pilot to address the inequalities experienced by young people leaving care. And the programme was designed very closely in partnership with health commissioners, and started just before Christmas. Around this time, I think we just appointed our first navigators. And just after that, the Children's Social Care Independent Review from government was released. And in that review, it says this, that the disadvantage faced by the care experience community should be the civil rights issue of our time. Children in care are powerless, are invisible, and they face some of the greatest inequalities that exist in England today. And that is exactly why the programme was initiated and developed, and why it has already been a huge success. So we've worked with at least 50 young people who've experienced some extremely traumatic and difficult experiences through their childhood, and really need some additional support to move forward into adulthood. So again, children leaving care make up about 0.7% of children and young people in England. So a tiny proportion of children and young people have been looked after, which means in care. But they make up 25% of all street homeless people. So a huge issue with into adulthood, with people not being able to cope with some of the demands of modern life. 27% of people in prison have been in care. So again, huge proportion of people in prison experiencing care, and 58% of youth justice sentences are for children that have either been in need, i.e. they're high risk, identified by social services, or they have been in care. So again, care leavers can be seen as a big problem to the social system, to the state. They cost a lot of money if they are not supported well, but that really needn't be the case. And I want to share with you Max's story next. And thankfully, I'm not reading this out. Max is going to share his story in his own words in a short film which we're going to show you. We were able to, three of our clients were happy to be filmed, and Max was one of them. And he's going to speak for 2 minutes just about his experience.
You're about to hear from Max, who was referred to me in January this year from Maidstone Probation Service. Max had some issues around being in and out of prison with his mental health, with substance abuse. And since I've been working with Max, he's addressed some of those issues and he's starting to get back on track. But I'll let you hear that from Max.
My life was all over the place before I met Rosa. So I'd been sort of homeless since I've known Rosa. I struggled with drug addictions, budgeting, had a lot of issues to say the least here. She's helped support me through going to several different court cases in and out of London and around the Kent area. She's also helped me while I was homeless to find sort of, I don't know how you say, like food in a manner where like shops are getting rid of like cakes or like just some way to eat of an evening and that. So yeah. Ultimately, it's been quite positive. I've never had someone that I've engaged well with and enjoyed to turn up on a weekly basis. Normally, I'd give it a go and think, brush it off sort of thing, but I look forward to seeing Rosa on a weekly basis, so yeah. I probably would have been back in prison by now, or still street homeless and struggling more with my drug addictions than what I currently am. I feel like I can be open and honest, and I don't feel judgment. You get food. That ultimately it is, you can tell that they're compassionate about their job, so when you can tell that someone ultimately cares, it makes you want to engage that much more. It has, because it's managed to take me out of the immediate here and now and been able to give me a chance to reflect. It can help with a wide variety of issues, whether you're struggling with budgeting, cooking, homelessness, or even your own mental health. It gives you another perspective on it. So when you're caught up in your own mind, sometimes it's hard to see the bigger picture. Sometimes you can do it with a fresh perspective from some fresh eyes. So that's what it gives you.
So I'm sure you agree, Max is hugely articulate about his experience and about what others can also gain from the service. And all three of the young people we filmed were as articulate and self-reflective and confident, and it can be quite frightening being filmed by a television camera, completely happy to open up and share their experiences. So we thought we might take a bit of a risk, and we're really delighted that we have this partnership with the Kent and Medway Medical School. This is the medical school that trains 150 doctors a year. It's a partnership from the University of Kent and Christchurch University, and I've been involved with the medical school for the last year and a half, and I do some lecturing there. And they approached us and they said, we'd really like to hear not just from you, but also from somebody who has used social prescribing. And I said, well, I can think of some people, but I don't know how easy it will be or whether it will work. But it did work. So what we did this month is myself and some colleagues, we went along to Kent and Medway Medical School and we ran trainee GP seminars for 150 medical students in year one about the importance of social prescribing, and 3 young care leavers, not those care leavers, other care leavers we worked with, but equally passionate and articulate, came with us. And they each had their session for over half an hour where they shared their experiences and they took questions. And it was really powerful. So just to tell you about Ryan. Ryan sat here in front of, as I say, 50 medical students, all his age, generally very well educated, affluent young people from all over the world. And Ryan shared his experience. His mother had died when he was 10 and he had gone into care. His mental health had deteriorated. He was sectioned and held in a secure psychiatric inpatient unit. He's now living independently. He's 21 and he's receiving support from our service. And what Ryan did that I thought was so powerful and so important is he challenged all of those medical students. He didn't just say, this is my story, poor me. He said, all of you here, I want you to raise your hand if you've ever experienced mental illness. And 1 student raised their hand. Now, when we know statistically that 27% of young people have a probable mental health problem, the likelihood of that being true is low. So he didn't accept this, Ryan. He said, I don't believe you. I actually think that it's far more of you, but you are all subject to shame and stigma. And that's really important because he didn't just recognise shame and stigma himself, but he recognised that anybody can experience that. And he said, what I would say to you is just because you're going to be doctors, it doesn't mean you won't need help. And I would urge anybody who has a mental health problem to get the help they need, which is amazing, really. And they really reflected on that. So he also said, you've got to put yourself in the shoes of the patient. Patients aren't just bodies. You need to think about what's going on in their lives and what has previously happened to them before you just respond to them. So this is a 21-year-old man with, he's not a medical student, but the wisdom and insight that he was able to share is amazing. And the university lead emailed us and said, actually, this was a unique learning experience for our students. So again, these care leavers don't have to be problems, and these are care leavers with particularly challenging backgrounds. These care leavers can be training the doctors of the future. They can be making sure that doctors in future are empathetic and caring, and that there isn't a stigma around mental health. So this was really just the start of this, and we really hope next year to do a lot more of helping people to have a voice and really shape the healthcare of the future. I've got one more story to share with you, and this is Eleanor. Has that come up? There we are. So Eleanor was 17 when she was referred last year. She was referred by a health coordinator. This is a new post within the system which aims to join up health services and education services for young people that have got additional needs. And she was referred to our service, which is based in GP practices. It's the Children and Young Persons Navigation Service. And initially contacted via her dad. Eleanor, he says, is a high achiever at school. She's academic and she's ambitious, but she's not been in school for 2 years. So obviously post-pandemic and everything else, and there are many, many children and young people who have not returned to school. Eleanor's autistic, and she also has experienced really complex mental health issues. She's been sectioned and she has attempted to take her own life. So Eleanor's experience has been very difficult. This failed suicide attempt has left her paraplegic. She's reliant on a wheelchair and she's undergoing really gruelling rehabilitation. So again, Eleanor is somebody a bit like Chris, who is facing extreme medical, social and mental health issues, and again can be perceived as being needing help and being left behind. She feels isolated, no wonder, she's stuck at home, she lacks confidence. All she wants is to access a safe space, and she'd really like to meet other autistic teenagers, but nothing is available in the local area. So what happens with Eleanor? Again, we've got another service, a sort of add-on service to the Children's Health and Wellbeing Navigation Service, funded by Kent County Council, helping people that may be experiencing issues such as mental health or physical disabilities to think about what and connect them with others. So the Connect worker, Patrick, has helped Eleanor actually design a new group. So she helped to identify the venue, the times and the activity, and she helps Patrick actually promote it, because who better to promote a social group to young autistic teenagers than a young autistic teenager? So she advises him, actually, why don't we send photos of the venue in advance in case they're anxious? Why don't we send pictures and little updates of any of the staff or volunteers who'll be there? And then Eleanor's connected with another young person, and they start to text each other. This young person is homeschooled, and Eleanor can't believe she's met someone like her, that they have so much in common. So the first session takes place and 5 young people attend. And Eleanor said it went really well. It was relaxed, very welcoming, lots of interaction. And here we have a photo of that first session. Here's Eleanor. Interestingly, what they wanted from the venue is space to be a group of teenagers, but also to have their mums nearby if they need them. So the people you see in the background are the mothers, and they're obviously also getting to know each other and sharing experiences, but the young people here having their own space. So this was the first time that they're interacting. So Eleanor has got all of the support, not just from us, but from the health coordinators and others. And she's now taking her exams, and she's going to be involved in future co-production for different social events, making sure that they continue to be really inclusive. So the official name for this sort of work is co-production and peer support. And Kent County Council and the Health Service will talk about co-production and peer support. But that's a very grand way of just describing listening to somebody and helping them shape what their needs are. So the title of my presentation was Innovations and Solutions in Healthcare. And really, I don't think there is any innovation or solution, because it's absolutely the most basic and simple thing. People are the solution, not the problem. And all we need to do is listen to them, find out actually what is it that matters to them, not what's the matter with them, or what they may appear to need on the surface, but actually what's important to them, what do they need. Value their experience. Each of the three people I've talked about today has got so much wisdom, so much insight, so much resilience to support other people and to help change the system if we'd only listen to them, and involve them. Just because somebody appears to be bedbound or in a wheelchair or absolutely crippled by their mental health and anxiety, if we work creatively and supportively, they can still be volunteers. They can be members of staff. So don't be afraid to find out what somebody's opportunities could be for people and support them into that. So really it's not about innovation, or it shouldn't be about innovation. It's really much more about the very basics and fundamentals of working with people, and that's what we do at Involve. So I'm going to finish there, and I'm going to hand over to my colleague Jane, who's going to talk to you a little bit more detail about one of our services, Actively Involved.
Hi everyone, I'm really pleased to be here today. So I'm Jane, and I'm really, really lucky because I'm going to be talking to you about Actively Involved. Oh, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Okay, so Actively Involved you may know of as the KCC Community Wellbeing Contract. So we were lucky enough to win that back in April 2021 in West Kent, and then lucky again to win it again up in this area, up in Dartford, Gravesend and Swanley. So the contract started when we were still in forms of lockdown in April 2021. We had a lot of people that hadn't been out of the house for a year or so. We started that contract off with 500 people waiting to access it as well. So we were mobilising the contract, we were bringing the staff in, and we had a lot of people actually waiting to access the service. The staff were working with people who really had physically, and not only physically, really mentally deteriorated during the pandemic. They'd become deconditioned. Some of them hadn't been out at all. They'd been shielding. In fact, some of them still were shielding when they were referred in. People were frightened. They were scared about what was going to happen. And speaking to those people and trying to work out with them what it was that would help them was really quite challenging for the staff. It took a while to build relationships with people, a lot of fear at that time. So how do we approach this? So we really focus on what matters to people. So when the staff came into the service, what I said to them was, this isn't about us providing made-up solutions for people. It isn't about us just finding an activity and thinking, oh, well, that's on in your area. This is all about what matters to people and listening to them. So you'll hear it called person-centred care. So I like to think that all of the staff involved will work in this way. And actually, it makes for a really fulfilling job for people. I'm sure you'll all agree, the staff who are sitting here, because you get to really listen to people. You get to help them to plan the care or the support that they need, and you get to see the outcomes of that as well. So we always say doing with rather than for. So taking time, really taking time to get to know people, building up a relationship with them, listening to them, and then identifying what really matters to them. And often what matters to them is not what we think. So as well, we work with a strengths-based approach, and really what that means is that we identify with people what's going well for them, what's already good in your life, and then help to build on that. And for some people that can be quite empowering, because your services may focus on what the negative is, or you've been referred to us because I hear you're really lonely. Well, actually, people might still talk to their neighbours, they might still Skype someone abroad. So building on what's strong and then helping people to build confidence. And this was really difficult in the initial days of the contract in West Kent, where people were really, really nervous. So what the staff did was they identified with people what their interests were now, what they might have been in the past, and what were the barriers around being able to do those things again. And taking time to do that, really listening to people. And then trying to support them around helping them to be able to access things, whether it was going to one of the activities that our partners are holding for us, or whether it was us finding things and co-producing them with them. There were lots of barriers for people. A lot of the people that were referred, transport was an issue for them. A lot of them needed care and support, and so they felt they couldn't go to activities. They might be incontinent, perhaps. So working with people around that, but also looking at things like their finances and how they're managing to pay for things as well. And then what we did, so you've heard Charlotte talk on some of the other case studies around drawing up an action plan with people. You'll see in the guidance of the NHS, it talks about support plans for people. Well, when we speak to people, they often don't want to think they're having a support plan. So we call it an action plan at Involve, and this is actively involved, and people are really active in that care and support. So the staff will work alongside the clients to help them achieve what their goals are. And actually, that might be really small steps at first. And then what we've started to do, so for those people that maybe aren't going to attend an activity, they can't go alone, or they're just really, really nervous, they haven't been out in the community for a while, what we've started to do is link people locally in their communities. So this is a group of ladies all at a coffee morning together. And then what we do is look with them, we look at who is in the community, who's been referred to us, what their interests might be, and it might just be that they literally want to meet people, and then we bring them together. And what the staff do is they find venues, accessible venues that are just out in the community. They're not in a day centre, so people are out in the community where they live. I think this is one in Bearsted in Maidstone. So at those, what happens is our community activity coordinators will actually set these up, and they will work with people to get them there. Our wellbeing support workers will make sure that people have got transport. If someone needs care and support, then we'll look to arrange that for them. And also, it's about building confidence as well. It's not easy, is it, to walk into a group on your own when you perhaps haven't been out of the house for a long time. So we make sure that we buddy people up as well. And yeah, creating a group that people own. This isn't an involved group, this is this ladies group, and we've just helped to facilitate it and make it happen. So we use a system as well that is really quite data heavy. So we take information from people, and they won't realise that we're doing this, but what we're doing is collecting so much information about them, where they live, and then we use that data to try and bring people together. So we have data about who's interested in just meeting someone in the community for coffee, who's interested in art, who's interested in perhaps going to the theatre or going to the coast. And the wellbeing support workers will collect all of that data and then work with the community activity coordinators to set up things or organise things. So what we're doing is organising things like coffee mornings, lunch clubs, art, craft and games groups. And some of those are quite small. There might just be 3 or 4 people that want to meet, and we help to make that happen. So the social isolation of people will start to reduce, and they actually get to know people that live perhaps 2 streets away from them that they've never realised before even lived there. We try to bring people together as well that have been bereaved and are isolated. A lot of people have been referred to us who were perhaps caring for somebody, and the person has either gone into a home or they've passed away, and there's a huge vacuum in their lives after that. So bringing those people together as well and connecting them with others in their local community. We've been getting people out and about on day trips, theatre trips, and basically just having fun. So this is some photos. And the staff attend these, but we also have volunteers as well that attend. So none of this can happen without our volunteers. I think Davina's here today, isn't she? So Davina's our volunteer coordinator, and she's done some amazing job on our actively involved contract. We now have, it's probably more than this now, Davina, but we have 110 DBS checked volunteers. And they're really, some of those may even have started off as a client, but they've got skills to share, or they really would like to help other people. And they help us by buddying, they attend our day trips, they run our coffee mornings for us, they do some befriending, and they also attend the postural stability classes to help at those as well. Davina and I have made sure that all of the volunteers have the training that they need. So Davina runs sessions to bring all of the volunteers together. It's a social side for them as well. But also we make sure they're trained in GDPR, safeguarding, so that they know how to report things back to us if there's any issues with any of the clients that we're working with. But also they're really there supporting and building confidence for clients. So they are that friendly face at a group that will meet someone. They're that friendly face that will maybe wait outside for somebody who's too afraid to come in alone. So some outcomes. I just had a look at some of the outcomes for this year. So on average, people who come into actively involved, their happiness will increase by an average of 19%. And when we're looking at people that perhaps hadn't been out of the house for a long time, I think that's a really good achievement. A massive decrease in anxiety by an average of 30%. And feeling less lonely, improving by an average of 29% this year. And being able to carry out everyday activities. We can't work with people until everything's okay for them at home as well. So by an average of 23%. I'm really, really pleased today because I've actually persuaded one of our wellbeing support workers, Tyne, to actually come up, and Tyne's going to talk to you about a person that she worked with. So it's a case study that Tyne's kindly written for me. And just to explain a bit, Tynes has a very special role. She's a wellbeing support worker, but she is the wellbeing support worker who works with the people who are perhaps the most anxious, the most afraid to join in anything, and perhaps with the most complex needs. So I'm going to let you read that. Do you want to come down there?
I'm going to go straight into it just because it's easier.
Yeah.
So this is a case study about a lady called Paula. Paula was referred into Involve by a charity as she was feeling lonely and isolated, and struggling with her mental health illness, which was also impacting on her ability to cope at home. She had previously tried to commit suicide and been a frequent ambulance service caller and a frequent A&E attender. Paula was supported by a mother who was in her 90s. Paula lives alone and had some difficulty coping managing her home. She had spent some time staying with her mother while this was being resolved, and they recovered from having COVID as well. Involve provided support under the Community Navigation Service for carers to help clean up the property to ensure that Paula could cope ongoing and support her mum for the caring role. After Paula had recovered from COVID, I had called her to introduce myself, and she had expressed to me that she was feeling lonely and isolated, as her only contact was her mum. She had been feeling that she could not go on, feeling extremely anxious following a suicide attempt earlier in the year. She was receiving support around this from the mental health services. I offered to visit Paula at her home as she was so anxious, and I made an appointment to visit her. I went to visit Paula at her home and reassured her that we can do this in our own time. We discussed an action plan with goals on how she would like to move forwards. The first step agreed was that we would go out together for a coffee. I met Paula in a local place to start with. Oh, I've gone all...
You're fine.
Sorry, everyone.
Where are you?
I'm
Anyone?
there somewhere.
Coffee. Here you go. I telephoned her.
Oh yeah, that was it. Sorry. I telephoned her a few days before to confirm that I would still like to meet her, but she was in hospital due to a deterioration in her mental health, so we rescheduled the coffee meet-up. I called Paula again to confirm, but at this time she was currently having a meeting with a crisis as she was struggling to manage her mental health. She had been calling paramedics out at night because she felt she could not manage. I reassured Paula and I explained that we would make a new appointment once she is feeling well enough. Paula telephoned me a few weeks afterwards and informed me that she was feeling ready to meet. So we met at a park near her home and we had a coffee and a chat. Due to being anxious, Paula explained that she was concerned about attending a group. So we agreed to meet at the group venue on our own for a coffee so that Paula could get used to the surroundings before meeting in a group. Paula found this very helpful. Paula then agreed to attend the Trinity group with me. Although she was nervous, she was very proud that she had finally attended the group with my support. Paula decided to attend the week after on her own as she had enjoyed it and she also knew the volunteer would be there. Paula did attend, although she felt extremely anxious. The volunteer at the group had reassured her. Paula since then attended on her own, each time feeling a little more confident and a little less anxious each week. Paula is also attending a garden centre trip, and due to being anxious in a new place, I have offered to attend with her for further one-to-one support to settle in the group. Paula has said the following to me when I reviewed with her action plan and goals. I still have days where my mental health gets me down, but I am learning to manage this. Just knowing I can attend groups weekly and I am now starting to attend trips has just turned my life around. I now feel I'm in a position where I can look for further relationships and friendships, as I was not able to do this before. I'm making some big achievements that I never thought I would do. I feel alive again. I feel a lot less lonely and isolated. I still have days where I feel lonely, but this is slowly reducing as I am learning to manage this better. The groups help divert my anxiety away. Paula has also said if she had not been referred into actively involved, she feels that she would have just kept spiralling out of control, continued to fall down that dark black hole. She would have continued to go in and out of hospital. She certainly would not have gone to any of the groups and got her life back on track. I asked Paula if she had any suggestions of how we could have improved her experience with actively involved, and she said, "No suggestions. It has been the most wonderful experience. This has changed my life. I cannot thank you and Involve enough. I made this change not just for myself, but for those who have supported me to show you how much I appreciate you all."
Thank you, Ty. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to hand over to Gary now.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's so lovely to be here talking about partnerships today, surrounded by so many of our partners and actually hosted by one of our partners here at the Guru Nanak Darbar Gurdwara. Glad I remembered that right. I'm here for about the next 10 minutes to talk to you about our approach to partnership working, really our philosophy to partnership working, our approach to commissioning and grant funding partner organisations, and how we make sure that as a wide partnership involving its partners are able to support and develop each other. We've got a lot of partners. In fact, way too many. I couldn't fit them all up on this slide. And I'm looking around the room feeling really guilty at every organisation whose logo I didn't manage to squeeze on this slide. If I put any more on there, I made them all so small that they began not to make sense anymore. So loads of vibrant partners. These are just partners that we subcontract through the Actively Involve or KCC Community Wellbeing contract. This is Involve Kent's 47th AGM, but it's only my 4th AGM with them. And I was shocked when I joined Involve Kent that the organisation had such an instinct to work with partners. And every time we talk about new projects, we look at how we can work with the voluntary sector, how we can share the work, how we can share good practice, how we can create new networks. And it seems to be more than an instinct, it seems to run in our DNA as an organisation. And actually the two contracts I'm going to talk about today, the contract that we have, that we subcontract out through the wellbeing contract and the social prescribing grant money that we gave out, neither of them requested or required that we worked with such a large partnership. We decided to do that. The people running the KCC Community Wellbeing Contract in East Kent are a very small consortium. And when we put the bid in to get the voluntary sector grant into our social prescribing work, we actually risk our entire work being rejected. We were one of 24 pilot organisations running that project, and we were the only one that put grant funding in there for our local voluntary sector. So we took a huge risk there. So why do we work in partnership? Well, I guess as well as it being just tacit for us, something that we instinctively do, that runs in our DNA, there's a lot of logic to it as well. Jane and Tyne spoke really eloquently earlier on about the way that we like to work with clients, and that is completely person-centred. And we can't work in a person-centred way if all we've got to support people is the activities that Involve run. We need lots of different organisations running lots of different activities in lots of different areas for support for clients to be kind of holistic and rounded. Working with voluntary sector organisations also increases our reach. Lots of people feel much more comfortable going to Eleanor for their bereavement support, going to Dartford Healthy Living Centre for their community and social needs than coming to Involve. And being able to support those organisations to support people makes our reach a lot wider into communities. It also increases our diversity, inclusion and cohesion. So diversity in the amount of different people we can reach, ensuring that we reach people from lots of different communities who are associated with lots of different groups and identify in lots of different ways, but also diversity of activities. So some people like to do art and cultural activities, other nature-based, others social, and some exercise. It helps us to invest in innovation and development and really help organisations who are coming up with new ways of working with people. And very much when we got these community wellbeing contracts or these actively involved contracts, we felt a great responsibility around market stewardship. We hold these contracts for 4 or maybe 5 years, and then we have to retender for them. And for us, it's really important that we leave a legacy behind of a really vibrant voluntary sector. So practically, how do we work with the sector? Well, whenever we can, we look to subcontract to make sure that we have that great reach into communities. We run a directory of services connecting people to a whole wide range of organisations. Not all of our clients come through us. And in fact, many people are involved in Involve activities without even knowing they're Involve activities. They go onto a directory of services and they find an activity and they go along and take part in it without ever knowing it was funded by us. We run a weekly newsletter which connects the sector, shares good practice. We run forums, and wherever we can, we secure grants. And in fact, just a few days ago, we managed to secure our warm hub grant in Maidstone so that we're able to support voluntary sector organisations, support people in warm hubs with really exciting activities, not just somewhere to go all day when they can't put their heating on and keep warm, but making sure the people in there are engaged with utilities advice and with really fun activities to do. And engagement. When we work as a sector together, we have a very strong voice. On the actively involved contracts, we now have 46 partner organisations. When we can go to the commissioners and say, our 46 voices are telling you that there's a slightly better way to do this, our commissioners really listen to us. So commissioning and funding the sector. So the first way we do this, and as I said, in 2017, we secured some money from NHS England to be one of 24 pilot sites for social prescribing. And we put in there that we wanted to be able to give away £25,000 a year to the voluntary sector to support social prescribing. So in the last 5 years, we've given away 5 different grant rounds, and we've supported lots of different organisations and causes. And I'm not going to sit here and read them all out. There's way too many on this slide for me to do that. But a few that highlights for me are that we've supported Boxing for Parkinson's. And I put that in there because I really didn't know that was a thing. But apparently boxing really helps people in earlier and mid-stage Parkinson's with their motor skills, and really helps come to create a situation where they can live easily and more independently. I'm assured they don't actually hit each other. They just do the boxing practice. We funded some skiffle music for mental health. We funded lots of guides so that all across West Kent, people who were taking part in park runs, who needed a guide to run around with them because of a visual impairment, could have that guide and could access the park runs. We funded some allotments around some GP projects, some life skills for homeless people moving into temporary accommodation, and some Christmas food parcels for families. This year, those grants were entirely centred around the cost of living crisis and how we could help our voluntary sector partners to help their clients around the cost of living crisis. So in the 5 years that we've run this grant, we've given out £128,500 in 92 grants to 78 organisations. Those 78 organisations have helped 10,625 people, and with 1,228 volunteers. So that moves us on to the Universal Community Wellbeing contract that we recently won. And when we were bidding for it, me, Charlotte and Jane sat in the office, and we wanted to have the biggest partnership possible. We didn't want to just keep as much of the money. That was never, ever the conversation. We wanted the widest, most diverse amount of organisations in our partnership as possible. We wanted applications to be open to everyone, even if they were in other bids. And actually, every small organisation I met in the run-up to this, when we were building partners, I said, please make sure that you're in every bid that goes in, because that way you're definitely guaranteed of getting some funding. We wrote in our bid that we gave independent support for organisations to manage the transition from grant funded to contract funded, and support them in developing a new market. And we developed an open and transparent partnership with people and organisations' voices at the heart. Because of this partnership, we've been able to provide a much wider range of activities for people in our communities. So before this, I think things were quite limited to activities like coffee shops and a few seated exercise groups. But now our community can get involved in things like beekeeping, cooking, Zumba, line dancing, historical artefact handling, bat box building. Eel counting was the one that I had to look into, because firstly, it sounds incredibly difficult to count eels. And secondly, I wasn't quite sure why we were counting eels, but apparently it's our partners Medway Valley Countryside Partnership who walk along the local rivers and look at the eel population, and that gives us some indication of the health of the rivers. And they do annual surveys every year and take a lot of our older people along with them. So a real diverse range of activities available, a real menu of activities available. So finally, how we support and develop each other as a sector. Our support, our independent support that we brought in for our voluntary sector has worked with them and has raised over £156,000 with them. And that's not for projects that we're involved in, that just supports the partner organisations that we work with. We survey all of our partners, and in fact at the moment there's a survey going out that is entitled "How Can Involve Improve as a Lead Partner?" So we're finding out from them how we can be better as an organisation, how we can lead this consortium of organisations better. Regular partnership meetings with networking and ideas for sharing. Joined up voice to influence commissioners. And it really helps to manage capacity. Running such a large partnership of different and diverse voluntary sector organisations really helps, because we know when one fills up and where there's space in others, and we can help divert the need in the community to the organisation that's got the most capacity. So the financial support we've given is year to date, or up to today, we've given away, or we've supported organisations to the tune of £780,750. And Joe tells me, who's our finance officer, that by the 1st of April, we'll have supported the voluntary sector to secure £1 million in funding through the work that we've done for our subcontracting and for our grant work. We really believe that as a sector, we all need each other to survive, and that together we are stronger. So I'm going to hand over to our Innovations and Partnership Manager now. I just demoted you. I'm going to hand over to our Head of Partnerships and Innovation, Sam, who's going to talk about a couple of the organisations that we work with and do a few deeper case studies into the work they do. Thank you.
So, yeah, I've been invited just to tell you a little bit more about some of our partner organisations, two in particular. See if I can work this. I think I just turned it off. I found the button. Sorry. So, yeah, so I'm just going to talk to you just about a couple of our organisations and a few of the sort of personal stories that have happened there. So I'm going to start you off in West Kent with Trinity, who actually have dual sites. They've got one in Tunbridge and one in Tunbridge Wells, and they run two activities at both sites, and it's a singing group and a music and movement group. So you can see here we've got lots of people having a fabulous time there. It's the same provision across Tunbridge and Tunbridge Wells. So people can come to one, or they can come to them both. Quite a lot of them do come to two, actually. So they start off with with Lydia doing the movement with music, which she's actually, I think, a qualified yoga instructor. So it's all seated exercises, and she helps them to improve their flexibility, their strength, and their posture, and they have lots of fun while they're doing it as well. And then there's a half an hour coffee break, which is actually quite an important element of this group, because that's when the people can come together and chat and form the friendships locally, and they can talk with the volunteers and with the team there at Trinity as well, who can really help with some signposting and some listening. And occasionally, well, not that occasionally, quite often actually, they get specialist speakers in as well during that time to provide them with some information around local support services too. And then after that, Jade comes along, and she's a brilliant singing instructor. She's really, really talented, and it's a very interactive session, I would call it. She gets them to suggest things, and they have sequences to remember and actions to get involved with. So it's a very, very interactive session. And I think yesterday, their group, they had to move out the Trinity Theatre in Tunbridge Wells, and they went to another venue because the stage was being prepared for a Christmas performance. And there was a grand piano there. So Jade sat down at the grand piano, and they all gathered around and were making suggestions for songs, and they all had a lovely, lovely time. I understand next week they've got their Christmas party, and 50 people are coming along to the Trinity to enjoy a 3-course meal with mulled wine and Bucks Fizz, and they'll be invited to stay and watch the show afterwards. So it sounds like a lovely, lovely day out for them. But I've got plenty of client feedback here, which I won't read out. I'll let you just read that yourselves while I just go over a bit of the support that's around the activities, which really does make the difference. That's sort of where the magic really happens, I think. So it's that time when they can chat with Jason and the team, and they know they can go there for some advice, some signposting, and I've got a few examples about that I just really would like to say. So Iveta moved to Tunbridge Wells. She was from Romania. She had no friends. She didn't know much about the area, what was going on there, and she's come along, and she actually, in her own words, she says, coming along and singing at the group, it's really helped her with her English. She's now got a fantastic set of friends there, and she feels much more connected with her own community, and she's supported. Nicholas and Jane, that's another example I'd like to tell you about. Now, Nicholas can't care for his wife anymore. She's now living in a care home full time, and he's not coping very well with that. He finds it very, very difficult. But he picks Jane up every Wednesday. They come along to Trinity, and they take part in both groups, so the seated exercise, and then they have the coffee and the chat. And that's particularly important for Nicholas, because that's when he can go and offload and talk about his week with Jason, and he finds that enormously beneficial. And then they do the singing group, and then they have lunch in the cafe as well. And then a few of them stay all day. They play board games in the cafe. So it's a full day out for them. And it really does make a difference. And I think that's that feeling of being listened to that's especially important for Nicholas. I've got one other study that I'd like to tell you about. Nancy was, she'd been going to Trinity for a while, and then she experienced a stroke, which left her speech very, very slurred and very low confidence. But because she had already had that established connection with Jason there, she knew she had the confidence to pick up the phone and to speak with him and say, what other help is out there for me? So Jason wasn't too sure, but he got in touch with us, and together we came up with some options for her. And she had a look at those options, and she thought one of them, yes, it really is going to work for me. And she got in touch with this organisation who have specialist techniques for stroke rehabilitation. They harness the brain's capacity for, here we go, neuroplasticity, which talks, I think it moves a function of brain from a damaged part onto a healthy part. So that's really helped her, and she's now back at Trinity, and she's speaking slowly, but her slurring has improved, and her confidence is back. So that's Trinity, and I hope you've had time to read the other ones as well. I didn't have time to read them all out to you. So moving on to more locally now. Now, I didn't know Peter was going to be here, so I'm going to hope that I'm actually accurate in everything I say. So here he is, and over there. Stand up, Peter. It's this man's vision in Northfleet back in, I hope I'm right here, in 2013. He wasn't even a councillor then, to really do something for the Northfleet area to improve the space and actually engage with the community and really do some good. So I had a chat with Julie, and Julie tells me it started as a project with some ex-offenders who needed the support to get back into employment. So he brought them in and did some guerrilla gardening, acquired a space, a disused piece of council space that was wildly overgrown, and cleared it completely. And not only did this improve the space, but it also gave these people that were looking for work some structure, some mentoring, some skills, and really helped them to prepare to go back into the workplace. And I think I'm right in saying that you also helped them to get their CSCS cards, so they could actually were prepared to go and rejoin the construction industry and get back into employment. But now the garden I think it's got a very different feel now. It's a community space. It's for the whole community, and it's got two real streams. The first stream is the volunteering. There's a group of men, largely men anyway, who work in the shed there, and they've done a lot of work in creating the structure around the garden. This that you see here is the compost loop, which I think is rather fabulous, and it really means that they can open up the garden for community events and workshops too. And they also get involved in building the beds for the other volunteers there, the growing team, and the focus is really around urban growing. They produce an awful lot of food here, and they put a lot of thought into the type of food they can grow that can be used in the community. And they grow outside as well. It's not just within the garden. There are 5 edible spots around Northfleet. And I think this is outside the food bank, so people can come along, and when they're at the food bank, they can stop off and pick some herbs that go with the items that they've got, the non-fresh items from the food bank. And also they open up the garden when the produce is there as well, and people can come in when they visit the food bank. They can also come into the garden, see what's growing, and get some fresh items to accompany it. The other element that they do is that real sort of supporting vulnerable adults who may have mental health issues. They may be trying to return from work, and might have had an injury or illness. And there's a specific case study that I would really like to talk to you about. George was referred to No Walls from the NHS. He was involved in a car accident which resulted in a stroke. He'd previously been a carpenter, but he'd lost all his dexterity and his confidence, and really couldn't go back to work. So he came to No Walls, and he engaged there. I think he was coming along 3 times a week, and Peter and one of his volunteers, who's a carpenter, really took him under his wing and supported him and listened to him, and they took him into the workshop where he had to actually relearn those skills of how to hit a hammer with a nail, which must have been very, very difficult for someone who was so good at it beforehand. And after going for quite a long time and receiving that support, George felt that he wanted to build a sculpture. He wanted something in the community, and he came up with this idea of a talking bench. It was completely his idea, and he worked with Peter, and he produced the plans and the budgeting, and working with the other volunteers, he created this fabulous 30-foot talking bench, which is now an essential part of Northfleet. The growing team have come in, they've put fruit trees around it, so in years to come, people will be able to come and sit underneath in the shade of the fruit trees and pick something and have a chat together. And I really think that is an enormous success story. As outcomes go, that's excellent. So I hope that's given you a flavour of the type of activity, but what I hope that's really demonstrated is that no matter what the activity is, it's the support is universal across our partners. The listening, the signposting, the making people feel engaged, welcome, part of something, that threads through every single one of our partners, and that's why we work with you. So thank you very much. But I think it's time now to hear from another one of our partners, so I'm very pleased to introduce you to the CEO of Kent Equality's Cohesion Council and Deputy Lieutenant of Kent, Mr. Govinda Sander, MBE. Thank you.
Sat Sri Akal and good afternoon. Sat Sri Akal ji. So, name's Govinda Sander. Really pleased to be here to say a few words. I'm conscious of the time. I can sing at the back and see people looking at their watches, and shall we go? So I won't take more than 10 minutes or so. Warm welcome to the Mayor of Gresham as well. Thank you very much for your time, and it was great to see your efforts kind of being shown to light. So good stuff. So you guys can hear, if I stand over here, yeah, you can still see what I'm talking about. So Govinda Sander, I run 2 organisations. I run a charity called the Kent Equality Cohesion Council, and also an arts organisation called Cohesion Plus. I'll talk about what we do. Firstly, my history briefly. My granddad arrived here on a boat via Tilbury. He arrived in Gravesham in 1951. My dad arrived here in 1964 from Punjab, North India. And this was a book I wrote about 10 years ago now. But why was it that these immigrants from North India and Pakistan, how was it they ended up here in the borough of Gravesham? You know, from these rural villages, most of them were farmers. And it's very hard work. And those foundations they laid in the 50s, which has got us to, you know, where we are today with this magnificent building. So I just always want to let people know about my story. So, son of immigrants, and I'm really proud of what I've been able to achieve, but it's on the back of the work of our forefathers and people like Jagdev, who you met earlier on, and the work that him and his family and other colleagues have done over the many years. So current roles, again, it's always useful just to provide a little bit of context. Wear many different hats, no pun intended. Just been appointed as a deputy lieutenant, and the deputy lieutenants are appointed by, and I was actually appointed by Her Majesty the Queen. I mean, obviously, sadly, she passed away, so we weren't able to make the formal announcement until the King had approved my appointment. And not just for myself, I think it's a great honour for the community as well. I'm the first Sikh deputy lieutenant here in Kent, and I think it kind of hopefully underlines the hard work and the integration that so many people have done. And I'm hoping, I went to a citizenship ceremony today, and that was quite humbling to see people who've just become British citizens, and I'm really looking forward to developing that role. I also do a lot of work with Kent Police, hence I know Richard very well. I'm the Vice Chair of the Kent Police Crime Panel, and also Chair the Gresham and Dartford Independent Police Advisory Group. And this will all make sense to me in terms of the context why I'm giving this. I'm not applying for a job or anything, but I sit on the Prevent Delivery Board, work closely with the Arts Council, work regionally with the counter-terrorism group as well. And I'm also a Kent ambassador, which I'm really proud. And we get, as I say to people, Kent ambassadors and the great and good of Kent plus me. And it's the right opportunity for me to go out and see, go all around Kent and talk about not only the work that I do, but learn about some of the great work that takes place around the county. I'm also involved with the Kent and Medway Active Partnership, and I'm a non-exec on the Integrated Care Board. And this all kind of hopefully will start making sense in a minute. So, 2 organisations are run. The Equality Council is a registered charity. We're there to provide help and support to victims, particularly of hate crime, discrimination, and we provide a lot of support to individuals on a one-to-one basis. And unfortunately, even today in 2022, discrimination, hate crimes take place. If you look at the stats for hate crimes in Kent, over 60% are around ethnicity or faith. And so we provide that one-to-one support. And that's the kind of work people don't always see. When they look at our work, what people see is the work we do for Cohesion Plus, which is the arts arm. But in essence of both organisations, it's about bringing communities together and kind of celebrating what unites rather than divides. And we try to do that through a number of different kind of avenues. So we organise kind of events around the county of Kent, but that kind of message that all the way through, it's about calling for equality, celebrating diversity, and championing inclusion. That's what we're about, be it through the arts, be it through the social activity work that we do. And the reason I always use this slide when I'm doing a presentation, when I first started work in the charity sector in 1999, our work was very reactive. So we would sit in the office, people who needed help and support would come to see us. We'd organise something for Diwali, we'd do something for Vaisakhi, but that was working in kind of silos. Early 2000, I think it's 2001, there were riots in the northern towns, and as a result of that, there was a report published by Professor Ted Cantle, around community cohesion and parallel lives. And what basically the report was saying was in areas like Manchester, Oldham, Bradford, although you had diverse communities, outside of school, outside of work, there's no interaction between the communities. So the Asian community would go one way after school, the white working class children would go the other way after school. And it was the same with the factories, it was the same where people lived. And that really influenced me. And that's something that we here in Kent, in the work that we do, we try to use as many opportunities as possible to connect communities, bring people together and kind of celebrate what unites rather than divides. And that is that kind of key message. And I generally feel the work we do here in Kent, not just us, colleagues that involved do, the work Kent Police do, Gresham Borough Council do, there's opportunities I feel for other parts of the country to learn from us. So this is some of the activity that we do. So we organise St George's Day celebrations. I've been doing that for about 12, 15 years now. And the reason I wanted to do it, someone who's born and bred here, growing up in the 70s and 80s, the flag, be it the St George's flag, be it the Union flag, it was kind of owned by the far right. And for me, it was about reclaiming the flag back. So we use St George's Day in the context of England today. It's about, you know, celebrating all the communities together. And we do big celebrations in Gresham and Dartford. I think this year we worked with 30 schools across the two boroughs. And, you know, the mayor attended obviously here. And, you know, it's a great opportunity for the community to come together. So it's that, you know, connecting people. And I'm really passionate about St George's Day in the sense that I think we should be using opportunities like that to bring everyone together. And still, I feel there's a little bit of stigma attached to it. But we celebrate Vaisakhi, you know, we celebrate St Patrick's Day, we celebrate Diwali, we celebrate Eid. So this, for me, is just as important. And there also used to be this strange thing, particularly about 10 years ago. Always used to get it from the BBC. Why are you organising it? And my question always for the interviewers would be, why not? Born in Gravesend, born in Kent, just as English as everybody else. So why not? So that's something I think is really important to me. But those of you who know, by faith, I'm a member of the Sikh community, a member of the congregation here. But we try to work with everyone. So Eid celebrations, we work very closely with the mosques here in the borough. And, you know, so I organise the Eid celebrations for the Muslim community. And hopefully the message there, I'm trying to kind of push forward here in Gresham, here in Kent. You know, it's not about, you know, your faith, your sexuality, where you're from. You know, it's about that commonality. And if we can all work together, you know, that just makes our community stronger. So the Eid celebrations we used to do on the community square before COVID. This year we had one of our biggest ones to date, and we had it in the park, and we've already got some big plans for next year. And it's again something we're really proud of. This year we hosted the Commonwealth Baton Relay here in Gravesham, working with the Gravesham Borough Council. The Gurdwara was involved, and that was an image taken just outside the temple with one of the baton relay baton bearers and two local groups there who kind of come together and collaborate on the day. And again, that's the essence, hopefully, not just of the Sikh community, but kind of the communities here in Gresham, how we all kind of come together. You know, by working together, the kind of more stronger we are. We also, wouldn't imagine talking about sexuality here at the place of worship, but I'm heterosexual, but again, we work with Gresham Pride, and we're one of the kind of lead organisers of the Pride celebrations, and that kind of idea about how we kind of connect and bring kind of communities together. So pre-COVID, or during COVID, it was the Pride celebrations were online. Last 2 years, they've been in person. So this year was our kind of biggest to date. We've already got great plans for next year. And what we try to do, be it St George's Day, be it Vaisakhi, be it Eid, be it Pride, it's not just for that particular community. It's about using those events to bring all communities together. So we all kind of celebrate together. Black History Month. Again, we just finished Black History Month off. And again, we've organised events, Gresham, Dartford, Margate, Maidstone. And again, it's an opportunity for all communities to come together. I agree when people say Black History Month isn't just for October. I agree 100%. But what we try to do with Black History Month, because obviously I don't make the rules up, that we try to use October to educate people, but educate in terms of the positive stories and the positive contributions that are made here in the county of Kent. And very recently, we had Interfaith Month, literally a couple of weeks ago, and we had a great interfaith celebration that we organised, and I know the Gurdwara also hosted an interfaith celebration. And again, it's about bringing the different faith communities together. And as an organisation, we try to utilise the skills and networks we've got to bring those kind of connections. Festivals of Light. Again, there's always the assumption, Govinda Sanda, he's Asian, that the Festivals of Light are linked to Diwali. They were actually inspired by the London 2012 Olympics. And in the build-up to the Olympics, there was something called a Cultural Olympiad. And they wanted community events organised around the concept of light. There's light in all faiths. And so we've been doing Festivals of Light. We started in Gresham, I think, in 2010. And they've expanded out to Dartford, Rootham, in Tunbridge and Morling. We do them in Swale. Next year, we're doing them in Maidstone and in Medway as well. But the idea is about working with children, creating kind of community celebrations where they take pride in the borough
the district where they live or the village where they live, take pride in their kind of local community, in their local ward, and people come together. And the celebrations we had in Gratian for the Christmas light switch on were some of the biggest that we've done. In that kind of 3-week period, we worked with over 31 schools in Cross Gratian and Dartford for children to make lanterns, and then they all come together and they kind of take place within the kind of town centre. And again, for me, the great ways of bringing young, old, urban, rural communities together to celebrate as one. And that's really the kind of message of our work, what divides, and this for me is really important. If you look at the last few years, our country's been so divided. We had Brexit, we've had COVID, we had Liz Truss, and now we're here. And my point being that, regardless of what kind of divides us, there's more that unites. And that is, I think, the message of our work. And we're really grateful to be working with colleagues from Evolve Kent. We're also grateful for the work we do with Gratian Borough Council and obviously with the Gurdwara. And the Gurdwara is a testament to what can be done when communities come together. There's a concept in Sikhism around seva, about selfless service. Everything you see here, I'm sure Jagdev would have said before, is all run by volunteers, and it's about the community coming together. And this is a building not just for the Sikh community, it's for the communities of Kent, one of the biggest free kitchens in the county, if not the southeast. And that is what has driven me and my organisation. That's what inspires us, and we're here to help and work in partnership with all of you here. So thank you very much.
Is it left or right? There. So I'm Donna, I'm the head of delivery at Involve Kent. So I'm going to take my glass off, so I'll see. So I want to talk to you about our new project that we're starting with Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells hospitals. So we've set up 4 social prescribing link workers. They're going to be working to the ESTA model with Maidstone Tunbridge Wells NHS Trust. This is going to work alongside 2 community navigators that we have currently funded by KCC that work on site with the integrated discharge team. We're going to be working it as a pilot project till the 31st of March next year, and it's been commissioned by the Kent Medway Integrated Care Board, and we'll be focusing on inequalities across West Kent. So the NHS Kent and Medway Integrated Care Board winter and surge plans for 22-23 have been formed with health and social care partners and community partners as well. It'll be focused on the cost of living crisis and how we're going to support the most vulnerable people across Kent and Medway over the winter, how we can support them when they're coming out of hospital, and providing them ongoing assistance in the community. So this is based on a recent report that was commissioned and carried out by the British Red Cross called Nowhere Else to Turn, looking at high intensity usage of accident and emergency services across England. So they found that less than 1% of the population account for 16% of A&E attendances, 29% of all ambulance journeys, and 26% of hospital admissions. So this project that we're working on will be largely focused on those people. High intensity usage obviously costing the NHS quite a lot at 2.5 billion per year. So we need to identify how we're going to support those people, physical, mental health conditions, and how we can support them to be discharged in a timely manner and across the community. So the Involve Kent social prescribing service based at the hospitals will be integrated with the emergency departments and discharge teams at Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells. We've already met with the discharge teams on a couple of occasions, and we're currently running training for the staff at the hospitals. Link workers are going to provide patient-centred support, helping them from the stage from when the discharge planning starts to take place at the hospital and up to 6 weeks once they go home from hospital. So they'll be working across different teams, multidisciplinary teams, care coordinators, and working with our voluntary sector partners. This will increase clinicians' time spent with other patients. The link workers will be focusing on supporting the patient themselves as they get discharged and helping them to remain safely at home, avoiding any unnecessarily hospital attendance. So I just wanted to share. This was a blog post by Kelly Ameneshar, who's an emergency doctor working across London and Surrey, and she's currently a fellow with the King's Fund for a year. So I thought this is just an extract from the blog post, but I thought it summed up perfectly what social prescribing is all about. So a patient who attends with recurrent exacerbations of COPD may be struggling to quit smoking and partake in rehabilitation. They're working long hours, they're living in poverty, they're suffering from mental illness. Then we come along, give them a leaflet. Here's a leaflet, how to stop smoking. That leaflet's going to go home, it's going to be left on the sideboard, it's going to be forgotten about. So social prescribing link worker can be involved with this patient from discharge till they get home in the community, go and home visit, talk to them about if they want to stop smoking, talk about their other circumstances, talk about benefits they may be entitled to, look at their living situation, and work with them to see what matters to them and build up an action plan. So link workers, they'll have a conversation with the patient, really understand what matters to that patient. So when they're on the ward or when they're at home after discharge, they've got time to be patient with them, focus on what matters to them, find out the barriers and what support they need. They can work with other partners in the community and other voluntary sector services. They provide a holistic assessment of the patient's well-being, and they can provide a support plan, looking at the community assets that they're able to use, how they can help to self-care themselves. They'll be supported for up to 6 weeks, and they'll be connected to other Involve Kent services if appropriate, such as our Actively Involved service that we heard about earlier. Okay, so these are some services that we'll be providing. So we could look at bereavement support. I know we've had a few patients recently that have been discharged from hospital that have unfortunately lost very close family members. So we can look at access in the community again and support for them. Connecting patients with social groups. So for example, our Actively Involved service and our partners that we're working with across West Kent. Help them to find information about activities that they can do. Maybe if, obviously, the cost of living crisis at the moment, looking at free activities or low-cost ones available in their area. Also identifying any carers. So it may be a carer who's been discharged from hospital that we can support under a current carer's hospital discharge service, or may identify that patient actually has a carer at home who hasn't been receiving support up till now. We can help them with accessing food banks, finding information about nutrition. We recently had a chap who contacted us who wanted some help. He's diabetic. He has very low income at the moment, and he needed some support thinking about recipes and how he could cook for himself at home. Ensuring they can access different support groups, helping them to stay well. For example, we have our chronic pain support group, and providing information on housing and maybe helping them fill out appropriate forms. So this will provide holistic community care, improving the patient experience, and hopefully having a positive impact on primary care. The pilot will measure outcome data, so we'll be asking for all of the patients, initial data from themselves, and then comparing that data at the end of the 6-week service to see how our support has helped them. We'll be analysing the data along with Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells Hospital to review if any of these patients are then readmitted and what we can do further to improve the project and improve the service and work alongside them to reduce readmissions. And hopefully next year we'll have a lot more information about how the service is run and some data to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our guest speakers. I can see people rushing to leave. What we're going to do is just have a really short 2-minute break and then move into the formal business of the AGM. So if you do need to pop out for just a minute, please do so. But we'll reconvene just in 2 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
AGM. I asked Charlotte why we didn't do this bit at the beginning. She said it's because everyone want to hear all the great stuff that Involve do. So I'm pleased that we left it to the end and we heard all of the great presentations that we've had. So by way of introduction, I'm Richard Lester. I'm the Vice Chair of the Board of Trustees here at Involve, and I've got the privilege today of conducting the formal proceedings on behalf of our Chair, Stephen O'Connell. Stephen can't be with us today, but he is dialed in from afar, from somewhere in Spain, to which he currently resides, and he wanted to pass on my thanks to you all for your attendance at this meeting and your formal engagement thus far. We are also, and we do have some of our trustees who are dialed in on Teams. I think that's all being managed from the front here. So for some of the formalities, we do need to engage with the Teams process as well, and I'll be guided by Charlotte and the team as to what we need to do and when. So hopefully that will work with all effectiveness. But if we need to work our way through it for those online, please use the Teams chat, because I think we can get messages through to the team here at the front. We do have no apologies that have been received for this event, so we have a full board of trustees, and my thanks to those that are here in person and those that are online. So there's a few things that we need to do that are really important pieces of business, and then a couple of reflections. So the first on behalf of the board is, I guess, the opening remarks and our views of where we are in this formal AGM even. Today is an opportunity, this section is an opportunity for us as a board to speak to you and you to hear from us. Equally, we do have to complete some important governance activity, of which we'll go through the process. Probably most importantly, and the biggest opportunity we have, is for those online or those that are in the room, if you have any questions, you can ask them today, because we as a board and the leadership team here are really happy to ask, to take any questions, and I understand that in previous years we haven't had many, so if you can ask at least one question, we might surpass the record that we've had before. I would like to formally pay tribute in opening to the work of Stephen O'Connell, who is our chair of the board, and I mentioned is online and dialing in. Stephen stands down today from chair of Involve after about 4.5 years, 5 years as chair and 10 years on the board of trustees. It's fair to say over that time, Involve, it's developed and it's grown to the organisation that you've seen today in the presentations. And I'm really sure, as I'm sure my colleagues on the board will confirm, that wouldn't have been possible without Stephen's leadership, his direction and his unwavering commitment to the work of Involve, to which he has put into the organisation for 10 years and chair for the last 4.5. When I speak to Stephen about that, Stephen would say it's not anything to do with his work, it's very much to do with that of the organisation and the board. But of course, he's created an environment and led the board in a direction that has enabled the innovation, the creativity and the empowerment of the board and the staff members to deliver the wonderful things that you've heard. So on behalf of all of us here today, Stephen, I know you're on the line. We want to say a huge thank you for your contribution. We wish you well in your endeavours as you move forward. And if anyone wants to find out, it is published in the impact report that you will have received, what Stephen's off to do, and happiness in your retirement and good health. So I would ask if we just put our hands together as a round of applause for Stephen and his contribution. Thank you. So also, I know it's been mentioned, but reflecting on our opportunity to use this wonderful venue here today, it's truly inspiring to be in the community. We've got a real passion for understanding and connecting with all of our communities, and this represents the strong partnerships that we've developed. So we're really grateful for our host today for looking after us, for giving us the opportunity to use this space, and we look forward to it to use as we go forward. But equally, we're working with many partners and in collaboration, and you've heard that in many of the presentations. So thank you for the hospitality today, thank you for the generosity, and for you providing us this space. In opening, I wanted to just reflect on sort of three key areas that I think are quite important. The first is a huge thank you to the board on behalf of Stephen and myself as the Vice Chair for your contribution and leadership over the period of this AGM that we reflect on the 47th year of Involve. All of our trustees undertake their work as a voluntary activity. They bring their expertise, their skills and experience, their passion and their commitment to help to shape the governance of Involve. And for that, we are truly grateful for your contribution, and thank you for your continued commitment in the way in which you have so diligently worked. Equally to the senior leadership team, of whom many have spoken today, you're truly inspirational. You do a fantastic job of leading Involve, and it is only through that leadership that we can have the successes that we hear of time and time again. Of course, and importantly, all of the staff, particularly those that have spoken today. I know how difficult it is to stand in a room and speak and to really reflect on what you do, but that is so powerful. The messages that we've heard, the stories that we've heard, and the work that you undertake is truly phenomenal. And I had the opportunity to speak to the staff group a couple of weeks ago now, where I was really clear that Involve would not be the place that it is without the contribution and dedication of all of the staff. We don't come into contact with one single individual who isn't passionate, dedicated and truly committed to helping people in the way that you've described. So on behalf of the board, a huge thank you to the staff team and, of course, the volunteers that give up their time to continue to advance and improve the services. and equally to the partners that you've heard about. That slide that Gary showed and in the impact report, it's truly inspiring to see so many organisations working with and for us in Involve to help to make things better, to promote the choice that we've described, to connect people in the way that you've heard firsthand, but equally to challenge those inequalities. So on behalf of us, the organisation, the board, a huge thank you to you all. Involve simply wouldn't be the organisation it is without the work of so many people. In terms of the future and going forward, we're really optimistic about the future. We've been on a journey as an organisation and we've grown. We've grown considerably over the most recent years through the partnerships that have been described. But we have some ambitious plans that we want to go forward as a board. We see us almost doubling in our size over the next 5 years and helping around about 20,000 more people than what you've heard already. And if you think about that impact and the opportunity we have to make a difference, we are hugely optimistic for the future. And we have every confidence with that team of individuals, whether you work in the organisation, for the organisation, you volunteer or you work alongside us, that we're going to be able to exceed that 50,000 aspiration. So we have great optimism for the future. A huge thanks, as I say, to all of the speakers today and for those that participated in the video and the clips. It's really, really helpful for us to see the impact of the work that is undertaken. So thank you. So that concludes my opening remarks, and I'll move seamlessly on to the presentation of the annual report, which hopefully you've seen. If you're online, it is available digitally as a PDF version, and anyone who hasn't got it in the room here, it's just outside the door for you to collect. I thought it'd be useful just to reflect on a couple of the points, and I know we have a short amount of time, but I don't want to miss the opportunity to do this. So the slide came up and we spoke about it a few times. 30,000 people have been supported in the last year through the work that's been described. That is a phenomenal amount of individuals whose lives would have been changed, impacted and improved for the interventions they've had with Involve. If you look deeper into the report, you'll see that of those people that have been helped, 89% of the people say their well-being has improved through their intervention with Involve. 46 say that they are less lonely, 46% say they're less lonely, and 32% report increased physical activity as a direct result of their contribution, of their engagement with Involve. 89%, and I did some quick maths on this, equates to about 25,500 people who feel better for their engagement with Involve, and that is a phenomenal amount of people that's lives are different through the work and the collaboration that's been undertaken over a significant period of time. We heard of 3 initiatives today, the Moving Forwards project. How inspirational is that? The life-changing activity that people undertake to help them and improve their own life and make it sustainably better. Actively Involved is truly inspirational, literally supporting thousands of older people to stay in the community and extending across the county from West Kent to North Kent and to beyond. And we hope that type of activity continues to evolve and grow. And we heard from Charlotte about the COVID helpline that was run, where we had over 20,000 engagements with individuals promoting choice and giving them information. It's truly inspirational to hear just some of these stories and think about what they mean. What was my personal highlight? I thought about my highlights and what does this all mean for me and us as a board. We're hugely proud of the work of Involve and the reach and the ability and the potential that the organisation has. Charlotte said earlier, and she corrected me here, she said it's not really about innovation. I think that was on your slide. I disagree a little with that. We don't often disagree, but actually I think there is innovation in abundance that comes from Involve, and I get it's about person-centred approach, listening to people and building on the good strengths-based activity, as Jane mentioned. But what I would say is Involve is a hugely vibrant and innovative organisation. Those words were both mentioned. Gary said that actually, I think, in your presentation. So I got that before we even heard it from you. And I do think Involve is innovative, strong, and will continue to grow as we go forward. So we're hugely proud of the work of the organisation. As a board, we look forward to seeing that growing and moving forward. And please take time to have a look at the impact report and really understand some of those things that actually work well and that grow. I was struck in the impact report just by one quote, and I know we've had lots of quotes today, but I'll just pick out the key bit of it. It's an anonymised quote, but it says, "Thank you. You really helped me to keep stable. You saved my life in a way. You listened to me, you were right with me, and I've never felt so supported like this in my life." And if anything encapsulates what we've heard today and the messages that come out of the various individuals is, it's not just an organisation that does the normality. It does in normal things. It practically saves people's lives in the way that the support that's provided. It changes people's lives. So I think that's really impactful and empowering. So a huge thank you. I present the annual report, I think, to be adopted this year formally. I'm not sure if I need a proposal in a second, or I don't, Charlotte tells me, but I would say please have a read of that and use that and ask any questions that you have. So at that point, we do have a moment, if anyone does have any questions, either online or in the room, to ask us as a board or any of the team that are here. We are happy to take any questions at this point as part of the formal proceedings. Not one. Anything online? Okay. Well, if you do have any questions, we'll be here at the end and happy to answer them if you can. So the next part of the agenda I have to do is to approve the minutes of the 46th Annual General Meeting, which was held on the 8th of December 2021. It doesn't feel like a year ago that happened, but it did. So I need, if I can, a member of the board to propose the minutes and then somebody to second to approve them. So thank you. We'll take the proposal and seconding from Duncan. Thank you. Excellent. And now I will hand over to the next element of formalities, which is the Treasurer's report and the presentations of the account year ending up to the 31st of March. And I'll hand over to Duncan Simmons at this point to present the accounts. Thank you. Do you want that slide or that slide? There you go.
Thank you. There's no words on there. Good afternoon, everybody. It only seems like a year ago, and it was exactly a year ago, I stood and said, after 2 years in Involve, how things had grown. This is the end of my third year of Involve, and the figures on the screen are those that are taken straight from the impact report that you've just heard about, so you probably will have read these already. Quite significant growth once again. A big business requires a lot of management, and I wanted to pay tribute to some hidden heroes, because an organisation of this size, a year ago I reported that we'd improved the financial structure and the infrastructure and our governance and our procedures and our processes. But that wouldn't be possible without the finance team. We've got Jo, who heads up the finance team now, and her able support that put things together and make sure that once a month we as trustees get to see the numbers and are able to quiz them on those numbers. And Gary and Charlotte are always able to answer in great detail every question we throw at them. I will put up some other points. Income up 57%. I think I said a year ago, as a banker, I'm always worried when growth is too fast because it's difficult to control and manage, but income up 57%. We are quite reliant on contract income. That's actually a positive because it means we know we're definitely going to get it, but it also means that contracts, when they run off, may leave us somewhat exposed. Grants in the current climate are much harder to source. As you can see, the income of 4.4 million, 91% of that is through contract. A very small amount is grants and a very small amount is trading income. Expenditure, 3.7 million expenditure. Very happy to see expenditure less than income. That's the way it should be. We do have to build reserves. At any one point, we make sure we have reserves of at least 3 months, unrestricted reserves of at least 3 months spending. The biggest expense, unsurprisingly, is salaries. I can't remember what the staff number was about a year ago, but it's very close to about 130 people now. So we are recruiting a lot of the time. One of the biggest expenses this year that we've had to watch very closely is the costs of recruitment, because that's become quite a difficult thing. The good thing is in recent weeks it seems to have turned around and we've had some really successful recruitment and haven't had to spend quite as much money getting there. Voluntary sector support. It's great to see, as we've heard today, much of our work is with other people. We don't do everything ourselves, and 11% of our expenditure has actually been engaging other people in the voluntary sector with grant funding, with support to do things on our behalf. Project delivery and support and governance costs at about 10% are reasonably typical of an organisation such as Involve. Management team. Just to recap, the finance team, Jo leads the finance team, keeps the numbers running, does it very ably. Trustees meet once a month. We have a finance subgroup, and I'm grateful to the trustees that join me on that group to run through the numbers. Management accounts, they run to about 14, 15 pages. We go through pretty much page by page, line by line, quizzing Gary and Charlotte on why their numbers are like that. What are the issues here? But our conversation isn't about the math. Our conversation is about the impact on the end user. Always has been, always will be. So if we consider part of our business is looking a little bit rocky financially, the first thing I ask is, what's the impact on the end user if we change this, if we stopped this, if we grew this, if we developed this? So much as it's numbers, and that's my business, it's always about the impact on the community. We have internal controls. A year ago I reported that we'd improved our internal controls, so we have a lot more structure to that, and that's now really working very well. I'm very grateful to our auditors, MHA McIntyre Hudson, and Duncan Cochrane-Dyer leads the team there. A year ago they produced an audit report for us which highlighted a number of things we needed to improve. This year we've done all of that, and this year's items for improvement are less than one side, and that's just 4 things actually. So we're very grateful for their support, but also very pleased with ourselves. Let's pat ourselves on the back for the moment, that we've got to the end of a year where we've grown, we've kept that pace, we've managed the finances well, we've managed our reserves well, and we've achieved a lot. And I call them hidden heroes. The year-end accounts, as I've said, thoroughly prepared, positive audit outcome. Beyond that, I don't intend to say too much more, because I know time is precious. The copies of the accounts are available both online and outside of the room here today. I do need to ask, are there any questions on the accounts? If they are technical, I'm told Duncan Cochrane-Dyer is online. He's our auditor. He can answer those technical questions. So I'll pause for a moment to see if there are any questions. I'll take that as a no, in which case I need to ask for a proposer and a seconder to approve the accounts. That's John and Andy, thank you. And then the next formal part is to propose the appointment of our auditors. MHA McIntyre Hudson have now been our auditors for 2 years, and it is our intention to propose that we appoint them for a 3rd year. So I do need, again, a formal adoption of that proposal. John first and Andy second. Thank you again. That concludes my part of the proceedings, and I'll hand back, I think, to Charlotte, or no, to Richard.
Thank you very much.
you.
Okay, thank you for that element of it. The next element that we need to deal with formally under the agenda is our governance process, which is relation to the election of trustees. So every 3 years, trustees can be re-elected if appropriate. We have one matter to deal with at this meeting. So Duncan, who is an existing trustee, who you've heard from today, is standing for re-election on the board. I hope that's still the case and that hasn't changed since this was printed. Good. And therefore we have to consult board members who are present and those who are online on the formal re-election of Duncan. So I need to read out the following. In accordance with Article 35, the board recommends the reappointment of the following board directors retiring under the provision of Article 32 and who offer themselves for reappointment for a further 3-year term. That is Duncan Simmons, and now we require the board members to vote. So if somebody could propose, and then I need 2 seconders. So I've got John, Deirdre, Andy, thank you. I think that's it, Charlotte, so we've got what we need there, thank you. And that concludes the formal proceedings of this AGM. And I now open to any other business that anyone in the room has formally or online if we have anyone who comes in with any questions or comments. So any other business? Okay, my notes say thank you very much for your time and attention. I'm now going to hand over to Charlotte for the final closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. You'll be pleased to know I haven't got formal closing remarks. It really is just to say thank you all so much for being here, both in person and online, and to our trustees via Teams. And I hope you agree it's been a really interesting and event full of real experiences. And to say a really big thank you, as Richard has already, to our volunteers, to our staff, to our hosts, and of course to our trustees. Our board members are, of course, themselves volunteers and very busy professional people, but give a lot of time, expertise, and hold a lot of responsibility. So really, a really important role for Involve, and thank you. And thank you, of course, to Richard, who chaired so ably today in Stephen's absence. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'm really pleased that you were able to join us. Thank you.